Louisville, Kentucky, 1975. The air was thick with anticipation in the packed arena, where thousands of fans had gathered to witness what many were calling the fight of the decade. Muhammad Ali, the self-proclaimed greatest of all time, stood tall in his corner, his eyes fixed on his opponent across the ring. Joe Frazier, formidable and determined, waited for the customary pre-fight handshake that had become a ritual of respect between warriors. The referee gestured for both fighters to approach the center of the ring. Frazier extended his hand, a gesture of sportsmanship despite their fierce rivalry. But what happened next sent shockwaves through the arena. Ali, breaking with tradition and his own usual showmanship, kept his hands firmly at his sides. He refused to shake Frazier's hand. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Commentators scrambled to make sense of this uncharacteristic display from Ali, a man who, despite his trash talk, had always shown respect for the sport's traditions. Frazier's face hardened, interpreting the gesture as the ultimate disrespect. The referee looked uncomfortable, but proceeded with his instructions, aware that tensions had just escalated dramatically. What no one in the arena knew was that 24 hours earlier, Ali had received a phone call that had shaken him to his core. His childhood mentor and first boxing coach, Fred Jenkins, had been admitted to the hospital with a terminal diagnosis. The doctors had given him days, perhaps only hours to live. Jenkins had been more than a coach to Ali. He had been the father figure who had channeled a troubled young Cassius Clay's energy into boxing, saving him from the streets of Louisville. If this story has already made you feel something, no matter how small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from, and subscribe to the channel. As Ali returned to his corner, his trainer, Angelo Dundee, whispered urgently, "What are you doing, champ? This isn't like you." Ali's response was barely audible, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Trust me, Angie. This isn't about disrespect. This is about something bigger than boxing." The bell rang, signaling the start of round one. As Ali stepped forward, his usual dancing footwork was noticeably absent. Instead, there was a heaviness to his movement, a weight that seemed to extend beyond the physical. The crowd, sensing something was wrong with their hero, fell into an uneasy silence. In his dressing room before the fight, Ali had sat alone with a letter in his hands. It was from Jenkins, written in a shaky hand from his hospital bed. "Remember what I taught you," the letter read. "Boxing is never just about fighting. It's about standing for something greater than yourself." Round after round, the fight unfolded in unexpected ways. Ali, known for his poetic movement and lightning-fast jabs, fought with a controlled intensity that puzzled boxing analysts. He wasn't taunting Frazier as he had in their previous encounters. There were no playful rhymes, no prediction of which round would see Frazier fall. Instead, Ali fought with a quiet determination, his eyes occasionally drifting toward a specific seat in the front row, empty, reserved for someone who couldn't be there. Between the 6th and 7th rounds, Howard Cosell, the legendary sportscaster, made his way to Ali's corner. "Something's different tonight," he remarked, microphone in hand. "Ogi, the Ali shuffles, the showmanship, where is it?" Ali, breathing heavily, sweat cascading down his face, looked directly into the camera. "Some fights aren't just fought with fists," he said cryptically. "Sometimes the biggest battles happen in here." He tapped his chest, right over his heart. In the crowd, a young boy named Marcus watched with wide eyes. Just 12 years old, he had saved for months to buy a ticket to see his hero in action. Marcus had grown up in the same rough Louisville neighborhood that had shaped Ali. For him, Ali represented possibility, proof that a black kid from the wrong side of the tracks could rise to become a global icon. What Marcus didn't know was that he was connected to this fight in ways he couldn't imagine. His grandfather, an elderly man he had never met, lay in a hospital bed across town, the same man whose absence Ali had acknowledged with his eyes. Meanwhile, Joe Frazier was fighting his own battle. Confused by Ali's uncharacteristic demeanor, he found himself unable to read his opponent's strategy. The trash talk he had prepared for, the psychological warfare he had steeled himself against, none of it materialized. Instead, he faced an Ali who fought with purpose but without malice, a combination that threw Frazier's game plan into disarray. In the 8th round, a moment of clarity came for Frazier. During a clinch, as the referee moved to separate them, Ali whispered something that only Frazier could hear. "This fight is for a dying man who saved both our lives." Frazier pulled back, his eyes questioning. He knew nothing of Fred Jenkins, had no idea that the same man who had mentored young Cassius Clay had also, years later, written letters of encouragement to a young Joe Frazier, urging him to use boxing as a way out of poverty. The 10th round began with a shift in the arena's energy. The crowd, sensing they were witnessing something beyond a typical boxing match, had fallen into a respectful hush. Even the most boisterous fans seemed to understand that something profound was unfolding before their eyes. As Ali and Frazier traded blows, their exchange took on the quality of a conversation, not hostile, but determined. Two masters of their craft, communicating through the language of boxing. There was a moment when their eyes met, and a flash of understanding passed between them. When the bell rang, ending the 10th round, Ali did something unprecedented. Instead of returning to his corner, he approached the ringside official and asked for the microphone. The referee, confused but unable to deny the champion this unusual request, allowed it. The arena fell silent as Muhammad Ali, still catching his breath, addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed arena, "tonight I came here to fight not just for a title, but for a man named Fred Jenkins." Ali paused, visibly struggling with his emotions, something the world had rarely seen from the usually composed champion. Fred Jenkins took a troubled kid from Louisville and showed him how to channel his anger into something beautiful. "He taught me that these fists can fight for justice, not just championships. And tonight," Ali's voice broke, "tonight, Fred is fighting for his life in a hospital bed. The doctors say he won't make it to see tomorrow's sunrise." A collective gasp swept through the arena. Even the commentators fell silent. "I refused to shake my brother Joe's hand earlier, not out of disrespect," Ali continued, turning to Frazier, "but because I made a promise to Fred. I promised him that tonight I wouldn't fight as Muhammad Ali, the showman. I would fight as Cassius Clay, the student he believed in when nobody else did." Tears were now streaming down Ali's face, unashamed and unrestrained. And what Fred doesn't know is that years ago, he also wrote to a young fighter from Philadelphia, telling him to never give up on his dreams. Ali turned to Frazier, whose expression had transformed from confusion to astonishment. "Joe, those letters you received during your darkest days, signed only with the initials FJ. That was Fred Jenkins, the same man who believed in both of us." Frazier, visibly moved, stepped forward. In a moment that would be etched in boxing history forever, he extended his hand again to Ali. This time, Ali took it. The two rivals, bound by an invisible thread of shared mentorship, embraced in the center of the ring as the crowd erupted in emotional applause. What happened next transcended boxing. In an unprecedented move, both Ali and Frazier approached the officials together. After a brief, intense conversation, they made an announcement that left the sports world stunned. They would finish the fight, but they would donate their entire purses, millions of dollars, to establish the Fred Jenkins Foundation for Underprivileged Youth. The final rounds were fought with the same intensity, the same skill, but with a transformed spirit. When the final bell rang, it didn't matter who the judges declared the winner. Both men had already won something far more valuable than a championship belt. After the fight, cameras followed Ali as he rushed to the hospital, still in his boxing shorts and training jacket. Fred Jenkins, barely conscious, managed a smile when the champion entered his room. "Did you fight with heart, Cassius?" the old coach whispered. "I fought with everything you taught me," Ali replied, holding his mentor's hand. Jenkins smiled. "Then you won, no matter what the scorecards say." Hours later, Fred Jenkins passed away peacefully, having lived long enough to learn about the foundation that would carry his legacy forward. At his funeral, both Ali and Frazier served as pallbearers, their former rivalry transformed into a brotherhood forged through shared respect for the man who had shaped their lives. In the years that followed, the Fred Jenkins Foundation helped thousands of at-risk youth find their path through sports, education, and mentorship. Among its first beneficiaries was young Marcus, who discovered that Fred Jenkins had been his grandfather, a connection that Ali himself revealed to the boy at the funeral. Marcus would grow up to become a coach himself, passing on Jenkins' philosophy that boxing was about discipline, respect, and standing for something greater than oneself. In 1996, when Muhammad Ali lit the Olympic torch in Atlanta with trembling hands, Marcus stood nearby as part of his support team. The moment when Ali refused to shake Frazier's hand has been analyzed by sports historians for decades. What appeared initially as a gesture of disrespect was revealed as something profoundly more meaningful. A man honoring a promise to his dying mentor, a promise that ultimately brought two rivals together and changed countless lives. It reminds us that the greatest victories aren't always won inside the ring, but in the hearts of those who understand that true greatness lies in how we use our talents to lift others. Muhammad Ali, who proclaimed himself the greatest, proved that greatness in its purest form is measured not by championships, but by the lives we touch and the legacy we leave behind. If you've made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing. I tell these stories with my heart in my hand to reach people like you, who feel, who get emotional, who live. If this truly touched you, give back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.